Hello everyone and welcome back to my YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be doing a spoiler review for Stranger Things Season 4 Volume 1. I probably will also do a spoiler review for Volume 2 when it comes out, but there's so much here in this first chapter that I need to talk about it. So it goes without saying there are spoilers for Season 4 of Stranger Things in this video. If you would like to see my non-spoiler review, that is available on my channel right now, and I can try and tag it somewhere up here. I'm excited to talk about this. I have been making a big list of everything that I want to talk about, so there's a lot. Also, I'm trying filming on, I feel really close. I'm trying out filming on a different camera. Hopefully that the audio quality and video quality will be better because of this. We will see. Fingers crossed. Okay, without further ado, did I enjoy the fourth season of Stranger Things so far? Yes. I just want to say right off the bat, I thoroughly enjoyed this season. This felt like Stranger Things at its roots. It had the vibes and aesthetics of like season 1 and 2, which, not that season 3 is necessarily bad for having a new aesthetic. I thought it was really refreshing and fun, but it felt so Stranger Things at its core, like going back to the kind of color palette of the first season in particular. So that was really exciting to me, and I did enjoy it, and I'm very excited to talk about it. There's only a few things that I think are pretty, not necessarily nitpicky, but they're pretty small critiques I have for the season, but I'll talk about that later. The first thing I want to talk about is the characters. So I'm just going to go through kind of each character and their storyline. Some I have more to say about than others, and we'll kind of just go with it. And if I don't talk about a character in the initial character category, then I'm probably going to talk about them later in other categories. So the first character I'm going to talk about in that storyline is Hopper. I couldn't find, I didn't really try that hard, but the guard's name that was helping him out, I'm just going to call him Enzo because I meant to look up his name and forgot. But Hopper's storyline this season, I think, is very heartbreaking and very interesting. I was worried that I would be honestly kind of bored or disinterested with it, mainly because of that. I was just worried about like how much they could do with him and this whole being in a Russian prison storyline. I knew that he would have to face up against a Demogorgon and stuff, but I didn't know how much story there was there for them to work with. I thought everything with the guard and his almost successful escape was very interesting, and it honestly, his failed escape made, and his relationship with Enzo made his whole storyline a million times more interesting to me than if he was just kind of there the entire time with no hope until Joyce showed up. I thought that was very, very, very engaging, and his whole relationship with that guard was super interesting. And that actor in particular of that Soviet guard was really, really engaging, and his whole story with his son was, I think, a perfect way to connect to Hop on a deeper level, because Hop's whole story about like being a black hole and being not as good of a father as he's ever wanted to be. And now we got even more into that because we got to learn about his time in Vietnam and exactly what happened to his daughter. These are questions that I always had, but I didn't think that they would ever be answered because I didn't think that they were significant enough. I thought like, oh, he fought in Vietnam. That's inherently a tragic backstory full of lots of trauma, because anyone who knows anything about that war knows that it was not pretty. And everything with his daughter we did see, but we didn't know what kind of illness she had. And of course, a child dying is definitely cause for marriages to end and break up. But the fact that his work with chemical weapons in Vietnam led to him seeing all of his friends that were fighting with him not being able to have children, and then him being like, oh well, I'm gonna try anyway, Sarah being born healthy and then falling ill and dying. I understand like why the marriage fell apart when that was something that could have been helped. Obviously if they wanted to have their own kid, that there was nothing they could do, but I don't know if he ever told his wife. I don't think he said that he did or didn't. If he didn't, that's definitely not good. But I really enjoyed getting that whole backstory to him and his wife and his daughter and the war. And I think that just says a lot about him and his person and his arc and his desperate want for a family. The last thing I'll say about Hop is that his concern for Joyce the whole time was so touching. And that moment when they reconnect and he has to pull away and look at her and just make sure she's real, that hurt. It was so beautifully done, and David Harbour did an incredible job acting this season. I really hope that now that he's with Joyce and Murray, I'm sure it's going to be hard for them to get out of Russia, especially without the plane. I shouldn't be calling it Russia, I should be calling it the Soviet Union. But I hope that his feet can get warm and that he can eat a lot of peanut butter. That was so heartbreaking. It just, I feel so bad for him, but I'm so excited for him to return and for him to reunite with Elle. And him and Jopper is going to be a thing by the end of the season. Like, they're going to fully be an item at the end of the season. I just know it. I'm very excited for Jopper to finally be canon. And I'm so excited for Hop to finally reunite with Elle. I think that's going to be really beautiful. Segueing from Hopper, I would like to now talk about Joyce and Murray. First of all, Murray Bauman, incredible character. He is so funny, so fun, and his intensity just fits the show so well, and it's so funny, but it just matches it. His intensity reminds me so much of like the kids' intensity in season 1. It's almost childlike, but it's also way more mature and more grounded in real world issues, but it's still it's so funny. It's so funny. And him and Joyce together they're like the perfect foil for each other. And I seriously enjoyed that. And everything with him and his karate, just so funny. And the fact that he speaks Russian is so handy. As far as Joyce goes, I'm really excited to see her and Hop together again, as I said. Personally, I think Joyce is most interesting to me when it comes to her children. I like, obviously season 1 and 2 Joyce and her like fierce protection of Will and Jonathan and now Elle. It's so integral to her character, and I really hope that in the latter half of season 4 we can get her interacting with her kids more again. It's not out of left field for me for her to not know that Elle is being bullied. I mean, a lot of parents don't know that their kids are being bullied, but I really want to see her be like, you know, a more active role in her kids' lives again, because we haven't really seen that in this particular season, and we didn't get to see much of it in season 3 either. So that's something that I definitely want to see more of. This is a perfect opportunity to be a mother figure on screen to Elle. Her saying that she had 3 kids to go home to was just beautiful, and honestly, anything Joyce can do no wrong. I love her. But regardless, I really want to see her with her kids again, because to me that's very interesting. And speaking of Will, as you guys know, he is my favorite character. One of my many Will Funkos. Ooh. Am I in focus? Here we go. Will being my favorite character means that I will always have a million things to say about him. I've decided to make that its own video. You guys know that I'm doing a whole nother character study. I've already done a Will Byers character study, which I'm very proud of, and so I hype it up all the time. But I'm going to do a part 2 of that. But before I do a part 2 of that, I'm just going to make a whole video about him and his very gradual and very well done coming out arc and like gay awakening arc throughout the entire series. Because anyone who's like finally catching on to the fact that he is not straight, this is not new. Like, this is not new. This has been happening since this has been foreshadowed since seasons 1 and 2. So I did talk about it in my Will Byers character study video, but that came out before season 3. So there's a lot more to talk about, and specifically there's a lot to talk about with him and Mike and his painting and all of that. So that is going to be, honestly, its own entire video. But not talking about that, and the fact that I love it, by the way, I would like to preface that. And this is a huge step forward for Will's individual character journey. It's also a huge step forward for Byler. And I know that some of you kind of get anxious about like Maleven not being a thing if Byler is a thing. Byler will not be reciprocated. It has been, I think, pretty well known since season 2 that Will has had a crush on Mike, or at least it's been well known to me and other fruity people. But it was in the script in season 2 that he was watching Mike while slow dancing with a girl and all this stuff. It's a whole thing. But I don't think that Mike will like Will back, but Will being able to confide in Mike, even if he doesn't say that he has a crush on Mike, just about his identity, that's very important. Mike is his best friend. Mike is who he is closest to out of all of his friends. And as he's gotten older, I think he's started distancing himself from Jonathan and Joyce and started in terms of telling them everything. But I think he really wants to share this with Mike, or at least he wants Mike's validation and Mike to be okay with this. And this continuation of him and Mike's season 3 butting heads, Will wanting Mike's attention and to hang out with his friends and for things to be normal versus everyone off dealing with girls and all of that. Like that storyline, which was annoyingly dropped halfway through season 3, is very much continued in this season, which I figured would happen in my reviews of season 3, but the fact that it's happening is very satisfying. So I think Mike and Will's relationship as friends it is Stranger Things at its core. That friendship is what carried season 1 to a degree, and it's like fracturing has left Will on the outskirts of the plot in season 3, and honestly in season 4, like he's third wheeling all the time. And I'm so glad that he's finally confronted Mike about this, and hopefully he can kind of become a proper main character again, because he has so much trauma and he has such a strong link to the Upside Down, and not just like, oh, because he was there. Like he still has a strong link. Like he feels the shadow monster coming. He can have that connection. And so in the latter half of season 4, I really want them to utilize that, and I really want, this is going to sound twisted, but I really want him to suffer again. Because Vecna would have a field day with Will. Between everything that went wrong with his relationship with his father, and being one of the main reasons probably why his father left, and then his whole sexuality, internal chaos that's happening right now. And those are just like and his friendships, him being like left behind in his friendships, and him being bullied throughout his entire life. These things are like a field day for Vecna, and they're not even the biggest traumas that he has. He was possessed by the Mind Flayer. He was abducted by the Demogorgon and hid in the Upside Down. He's seen death. He has barely avoided death many times. Like he has so much trauma. Vecna would have so much fun with Will, and I want to see it happen. That's so messed up, but I think and I obviously don't want Will to die. And I don't think he will. I think but imagine how perfect it would be if Will was struggling because Vecna kind of had a hold of his mind, and this was finally everyone's way of being like, yeah, we kind of do leave Will behind. Will, we love you. You are valid. You're the best friend. We'll play D&D with you. It'll be amazing. That would be so cute and beautiful, and just like, I think he needs to hear it. And that would be alone powerful enough to bring him out of everything. But again, he has such a strong connection to the Upside Down that really has not been utilized as much as it could be. So I want to see more of that. Segueing into Mike. Mike really needs to reconcile with Will. He's already started on that journey, but I think he really needs to just listen to Will. They have such good conversations with each other, and they have this whole, like they did in season 2, and they've started having them again in season 4. And their journey growing up and growing apart versus not wanting to grow apart, it's just very interesting to me. That friendship is there's so much to it, and I really want to see more of that. Mike also really needs to figure himself out. He's so socially awkward and like unable to do things correctly so much of the time. It's been very interesting learning, like seeing this side of Mike, but I also miss the Mike that like springs into action like he did in season 1. I understand also if he has a hard time saying I love you to Elle, because some people do have a hard time saying I love you, and clearly he had a hard time saying it to her in season 3. I really want to know what is going to happen with that whole Malevolent issue, but I also think maybe Elle, because and this is not in an insulting way to Elle at all, but I think she maybe is reading a little too much into the from Mike. But it is kind of weird that he hasn't said it, especially if he implied it not to her face. So I understand like where her internal chaos is coming from with this, but him and Elle just need to just properly communicate. And yeah, and I'm very excited to see more from him in the second half of season 4 and to see kind of where he's going as a character, because he's a very interesting character, but so much of his character revolves around others rather than an internal journey, which part of me is kind of wishing for that internal journey that so many of the other characters we see going through. Hopefully that's something that's down the line, but maybe that's why Mike's storylines have always felt so like they're missing something. We need to know more about Mike, and not Mike who loves Eleven, not Mike who's the best friend of Will, or Mike who's Nancy's sibling. Like, we need to know more about Mike, you know? Next on the list, Jonathan and Argyle. I love Argyle. I've been calling him Brochacho guy, honestly, like the Brochacho dude, because it's funny, but his whole being a stoner thing is so funny to me. Literally everything that every conversation that those two have together is so funny. Can you pass the olive oil? That's wine, bro. Like, it's so good. The purple palm tree delight, everything. It's so different for Stranger Things, but this season is so terrifying and so dark and so heavy that it feels like much needed comedic relief. I really enjoy it, and I really enjoy Argyle as a character. I think he's a funny addition, and he's so California. It's ridiculous. But as far as Jonathan goes, I understand where Jonathan's kind of dilemma when it comes to the root of his problems with Nancy is coming from. He's always been so family oriented. He's always put Will and Joyce first. I mean, that's been him the entire series. Like, the first interaction we have with him is him saying that he covered someone's shift at work because he figured that they could use the money, which they could, and that's why he wasn't there when Will went missing. But his whole character is so, you know, obsessed with being kind of the father figure in their family that Lonnie never was, and he's taken on that role. And so I understand why he doesn't want to go all the way across the country and leave his family behind to go to college. And also, it's no secret that the Byers do not have that much money, and that he would not be able to afford Emerson. And also, Emerson, that is so awesome. First of all, Emerson College, amazing. I did not go there, but I almost went there. And Boston is like the best city, so it's awesome that Nancy's going there. Personally, I don't know why Jonathan, like, why they're not doing NYU, because of that whole NYU. He's wanted to go to NYU since he was 6 years old. Like, what about NYU and photography and all of that? Like, I know that he has these passions. So He needs to stop burying them. And he really needs to communicate with Nancy. Also, Jancy is not going anywhere. There's no way they're breaking up because they are so right for each other. They balance each other out so well. And I think they just need to be together again. Long distance relationships are really hard. And the longer you're apart, the more you're like second guessing everything because you're not there, you know? And they're probably much harder in the 80s when you can't text each other every day and FaceTime and all of that. So they both needed to be in their respective like Jonathan probably couldn't have afforded to fly to Hawkins for spring break, and Nancy couldn't leave because of her obligations with the newspaper. But I hope that they can talk it out, and I hope that Jonathan doesn't sacrifice his dreams to go to a community college in California, because I know that that's not what he wants. It's what he thinks he needs to do, but it's definitely not what he wants. So hopefully Jonathan can sort that out. But him being high is so funny that it's very enjoyable to me. But they're on their way to Hawkins soon, and I'm sure that all of that will sort itself out. Segueing into Nancy. She's epic. She's a girl boss. Her fighting those demobats, she looked so cool. I totally ship her and Robin. Their like chemistry on screen is so amazing, and I know that they probably won't do anything about that because Nancy's probably definitely straight, but oh, that's so good. That's so good. And I think Robin is a little bit into Nancy. Just a little bit. But Nancy, she just looks so good this season. Her look, she looks like a proper female 80s movie star. A strong, independent woman, but she's also freaking stunning. I love her. I love that she is completely in control of the Hawkins High newspaper. She's an incredible journalist, and her conversations with Eddie's uncle, Frank, proof of her being an incredible journalist. One day she's going to have to stop breaking the law to get good stories, but I understand that at the point she's at now in the season, like her, like everything with Victor Creel, that was more of a life or death situation. But she really lies to get in there, and I respect her for that. But yeah, she's great. And this is going to segue into Steve, but I don't think that Stancy is going to be a canon thing. But everything with her and Jonathan will probably work itself out. Steve, I really thought was going to die this season. His near-death experience usually can cancel a character out for actually dying in a writer perspective. But when they started talking about him being a role model to Dustin, and they started being like, oh, maybe we should get together with Nancy again, and like the whole Stancy thing is being teased, I'm like, oh my god, Steve is gonna die! And then he didn't. When the camera panned to him and he was like, I'm not feeling great, and like he was bleeding, I was like, this is it. And I was so upset because if Steve dies, he deserves to die in a super heroic way, not at the hands of a demo bat. And also, I don't think if he dies, it should be at the hands of Vecna either, because we don't know his trauma. Characters like Max or Will or Eddie, like characters like that, it makes sense that they would die at the hands of Vecna because they all have the biggest trauma. Not invalidating the traumas of other characters, but their traumas we know, and we know they're huge, and they play a huge role in their characters. And Nancy too, which we saw at the end of the season, and I have no idea what's going to happen with that. And yeah, but we don't know Steve's trauma, you know, like we know that he doesn't have a great relationship with his dad, and that he feels kind of worthless, and we know like internal character struggles that he has, but as far as trauma goes, we don't. I feel like he deserves to die in a different way if he's gonna die. I don't think Steve, where he's at as a character right now, is ready to die. You know, like I feel like his character still has more growth that needs to happen, and I don't want his entire character to revolve around girls and like romantic relationships. I was also nervous that if he was the last one to go through that portal to the Upside Down with the way that they were all like climbing the rope. I was nervous that that would lead to his death if he was the last one to go, because the last one to go always gets killed. But it didn't happen. It ended up being Nancy. So I really don't know what the future holds for Steve. But I think his character, there's so much on the surface that's just waiting to be explored. And I know that he has so much more of a journey to go through. I don't think it's the end for him. Robin, one of my favorite characters. Love her. Love that her being a lesbian was the wrong way to continue that sentence. It makes her and Steve's relationship so funny. The whole boobies conversation was incredible. And also about Steve is I love that Steve never outs Robin through the entire season when there's a million opportunities to do so. He never outs her. And clearly she's not ready to come out either, because she's not telling anyone else. And that is very, very, very honorable of Steve. And I really respect that. And I really respect the writers, because I know that there are some queer writers in that writer's room now. And I respect the heck out of them for not having him out Robin. Because it seems like a minor thing, especially if you're saying it to someone who would understand and would not judge her, but it's really not okay to out someone. And the fact that he keeps that secret, it's so nice. It makes me feel so good that it's being handled in such an amazing way. And they're not shying away from it either. It's such a big part of her character, but it's also not the entirety of her character. Her anxious, rambling, and like spunky personality, and it's really great. And I think she's the character that the teen storyline really needed. She's kind of like the Dustin in season one Dustin, where he's like being like worried about everything, and not in like a Lucas way, but in a like when Dustin in season one was like, I don't know if we should be out here while it's raining. Like, we're going to the exact place where Will was taken alone in the dark in the rain. And like, that's exactly what Robin is like to the teen storyline now. And I really enjoy that, because you kind of need different types of characters. And she brings so much to the show, and Maya Hawke does an incredible job, and I love watching her scenes so much. Speaking of Dustin, incredible. He's a genius. Love him. Love his interactions with Steve per usual. And I love that how much of a genius he is so, it's really coming in handy in terms of answering our questions, like about the Upside Down. His idea with the physics of how to get through that ceiling gate was so smart, and it was so cool, and it's such an amazing visual representation of the Upside Down. And of course, if it were a portal on the floor, it would be the same thing. I mean, it'd probably be easier to get through, but the world would still be upside down in that sense too, and it's upside down through the ceiling just in the same way it's upside down through the floor. But the way gravity pulled on the rope from either side was so smart. He's so important to this show, and he's definitely on the list of characters that could die, but I don't think it will happen this season, because his scientific logic when it comes to approaching the Upside Down, and just his knowledge and just his brains in general, very important to this show. And obviously everyone loves Dustin. I do think his character is a character that has the potential to be killed off, but it's not going to happen in season 4. He's too important to figuring out how everything goes down, and I think they might also need that in season 5. But the more I think about it, the less I think I don't think he's near the top of the list for who could die, but I think he's definitely a possibility. But his character arc is not leading to death currently. But he's possible. And then, like, other characters aren't gonna die. You know, it just depends who. Like, Hopper, not gonna die, because they already did that with him. So it just, it depends. The Hellfire Club, love that. That was really cool. All those people were really cool. I love that Erica got to join the Hellfire Club. I love her in this season. This is my favorite Erica season by far. And I know that she had the minorest role in season 2, but she's so spunky. Like the Applejack Miss Applejack, I think it was, or Lady Applejack. So funny. Her patriotism is so, it's very funny and it's very 80s. I love her passion for D&D and how she's kind of leaning into being a nerd. Everything about her character gets better and better with time, and it's very fun to watch. And I am very excited that she's, you know, playing more of a role in the Upside Down stuff as well. But her playing D&D is so funny. She has a level of intensity too, but it's different from Dustin's or Murray's. It's comedic in a different way, but it's still really fun to watch. And so I really enjoy everything that they're doing with Erica, and I hope that we can continue to learn more about her. And I really want to meet Tina one day, because Tina is like the best friend that's always just there, and I want to meet her. Also, the Hellfire Club, it bugs me that now they're all playing D&D when that's all Will wanted last season, but it's important to Will's character arc that they didn't play it last season, and I get it. And I get that Eddie kind of reached out to Dustin and Mike and kind of brought them in when no one else in the school did. But that whole club is really cool, and that room that they play in is really cool too. Like my high school, and if you had a club, like you just played it in a classroom. Like it didn't look that cool, and the classrooms weren't that nice, so it's not like someone had a throne to sit in or something. But their whole like light, the candles, everything, it's just great. It's great. Speaking of the Hellfire Club, Eddie, absolutely love Eddie. Do I think he still has the potential to die? Yes. Do I hope he dies? No. I love him, and I wasn't sure how to feel about him. I didn't really love him that much. I honestly didn't even really like him that much when we first met him this season in the whole cafeteria scene. But when he had that conversation with Chrissy and she was so visibly nervous and he totally did everything in his power to make her feel more comfortable, that was so charming. Everything about him is so likable. I really like how so much of the season is like clearing his name. I think that's very interesting, and the commentary on D&D being like a poison to society and like there's the devil's spawn and blah blah blah, like that's also very interesting that they're addressing kind of the villainization of people who play D&D taken to a whole nother level, just like every D&D reference in this show is. But I really like Eddie. My roommate, who's also a huge Stranger Things fan, made me very nervous because she brought up that Eddie had that whole conversation about him not really being a hero in anything outside of D&D. He's always the one to run away and not jump into danger, and he only did because everyone else did. That kind of leads him on a path of having a Bob Newby superhero moment where he like saves the day and then dies. And the way he's playing guitar on top of that trailer, in the hellscape / Upside Down, that worries me a lot, that he could have a Bob Newby moment and save the day and then die. That would suck, but it seems like it could happen. He also clearly has a lot of trauma with what happened to Chrissy and Patrick as well. And I'm interested to know more about him. I hope that we can continue to learn more about him and why he's living with his uncle and not his parents, why he's so into D&D. Like, I want to know more about him, and maybe we'll learn more about him in the next 2 episodes. Maybe we'll learn more about him in season 5 if he makes it to season 5. I do think Eddie's on the chopping block, but I love him as a character, and I think he's very interesting, and I'm very excited to see more from him. The actor is doing an incredible job. And yeah, now segueing to Lucas and subsequently his relationship with the basketball team, aka Jason and Patrick and all of them. Lucas this season, I enjoy the fact that he's getting his own storyline and that he's figuring out where he belongs in high school. That's very relatable. A lot of people are split between friend groups. I mean, very rare. In media, they always show people sticking to one friend group. Personally, I've always been a floater, kind of like Lucas. I mean, I've always been a huge nerd, but I've also always been like a huge jock. And I don't like associating myself with that term, but I did varsity sports, and like I had friends in that era, and that was a huge part of me. But also a huge part of me was my nerdy side and my introverted writer side who loved movies and all of that and wanted to geek out. So I had different friend groups, you know, like I was never in my life like only in one friend group. And so I appreciate them kind of balancing that kind of struggle going into high school with Lucas. I went to a completely different high school, so I had to make new friends. But him going through that and kind of not wanting to be bullied anymore and wanting to pursue basketball and all of that is so interesting. And it sucks that he's doing it on that team because Jason sucks. And I think Patrick maybe had potential. It's hard to say because we really didn't know that much about him. And in the end, he did kind of go after Eddie just like Jason did. And that's, you know, not exactly good moral indications. But I hope that Lucas can find that balance, you know? And I don't want him to realize at the end of this, oh, sports aren't worth it and like the nerds are superior and everything, because it's like that's not how it is in real life. People are complex, and that's clearly something, basketball is clearly something that he's passionate about. So I hope he can find that balance and that it doesn't involve Jason, and that, I don't know, he can kind of figure himself out in that way and connect to Max too. I do hope that we can learn more about Lucas in the same way that I want to learn more about Mike. They have so much potential for us to like dive more into their characters, and we haven't yet, and that's frustrating. I know that there's so many characters to do this with, so it's hard, but Lucas has so much potential to me, and I really want them to continue with that in season 5. Also, I don't think Lucas is on the chopping block, just so you know. I don't think he's gonna die. Not gonna happen with him. Like, anyone who has any concern about Lucas dying can throw it away, because they're not going to kill Lucas. Not this season, not next season, never. The Duffers have been good about writing in more POC in this show, but that just would not be good. That would really not be good, and I think there a lot of people would raise red flags if anyone in the writer's room had that idea. They're not going to do it. And I don't want them to do it, because I love Lucas, and he has so much more that we need to learn about as a character. Speaking of Jason, hate Jason, but he's incredible. Like, that actor, he should be a preacher. Like, someone on Twitter was saying that he is accusing everyone who does D&D of being like a cult. Like, he's accusing Eddie of being like this demonic cult leader, whereas Jason is just straight up acting like a cult leader. The way he talks, the way he speaks to people is so a mix of like he speaks in front of a crowd to me in the same way that like ultra-religious conservative politicians speak in front of a crowd. Like, he speaks like a politician, but also he rallies people in a very toxic way. He like is very good at encouraging mob mentality. I'm surprised they haven't introduced a character like him yet, and I think everything with him is very realistic. Very realistic. And I am so upset about what they did to Benny's restaurant. I'm so upset. That is such disrespect for Benny, but I'm also glad that they tied Benny back in after all this time, because he deserves justice. Just like Barb, everyone's like, justice for Barb. What about justice for Benny? Poor Benny. Like, honestly, he did not deserve to die. They did not have to kill him, but it's over. Max. This is her season. Like, she... And everyone knew it going in, and everyone knows it now, especially after episode 4, Dear Billy. Sadie Sink is an incredible, incredible actress. Her performance in the Taylor Swift's All Too Well 10-minute version, Taylor's version, well, actually, it's technically All Too Well, Taylor's version, 10-minute version. That short film, her acting in that was incredible. I haven't seen all of Fear Street, but I did watch her scenes because, you know, I'm a coward and I don't like horror. And this season has been a struggle because of it. But she's such a good actress, and we knew this from season 2. I love that she's getting her time to shine. Her handling of figuring out that she's probably gonna die, oh, it just broke my heart. I would do the same thing. I would start writing letters too. She is one of my favorite characters on this show. I'm so proud of Sadie Sink. The writers have done an incredible job with her storyline. The use of Running Up That Hill as a song, of her being it being her favorite song, is incredible. Her running through the hellscape, her acting is so incredible. But Max, I can't even say enough about her. She's really carrying this season through Sadie's acting and just her her journey in general. And I think her journey in particular really emulates the heart of the show, and as does Hopper's. And I'm very excited to make a completely separate video about said heart of the show and the themes of the show. But she's really kind of carrying that out this season. I hope she's not targeted by Vecna anymore. She might be. But again, like with people like Will coming to town, like, I don't know, Vecna has a lot to feed on, and maybe he'll give up on Max and focus on someone else. I don't know, but she's still connected to him. So we'll see. Elle's storyline breaks my heart. I was bullied growing up, but that I didn't have to change schools. I was lucky to have someone stand up for me, you know? And it's breaking my heart that no one is doing that for her. I know that a lot of people are kind of trashing on Will, and Will should stand up for her, but when you think about his character, he's never been good at standing up to bullies, because he's been bullied his whole life pretty severely as well. Not as severely as her that we know of, that we've seen, but still pretty severely. And not just by kids in school, but also by his father. And I understand for him, like, why he kind of gets frozen in his tracks and like is unable to go help her, but I really want him to. And I love when he's like, it doesn't matter, like, she's our sister, like, we're her brothers, like at the police station, like, he will fight for her. But for some reason when it comes to bullies, he doesn't, and that frustrates me. But it makes sense that they pursued the bullying, and I love how they show that she's not just been bullied by the bullies in Lenora Hills, but like also bullied by the kids in the lab, which were suppressed memories. It's so heartbreaking that she tries to use her powers and it doesn't work, and it just embarrasses her further. I can't believe there's so many bystanders at that school and at that roller rink. It's truly just disgusting. But that journey with Elle, I think, is very heartbreaking, but so beautiful to see. And I love that we're going to see her overcome it too, which is really important for kids to see. And I know that a lot of kids watch this show. Everything with Sam was interesting. I love that Sam's protective of her, and that his agents are protective of her and don't want to give up where she is. It's heartbreaking that he teamed up with Brenner. Brenner has returned, creepier than ever. When the first 8 minutes came out, I was like, oh, like, Brenner's kind of likable in his interactions with Ten. Like, maybe, and he didn't even seem like maybe he was the top gun, like, in that particular clip. So I was like, maybe he kind of becomes worse as a person because of Elle killing all the other kids. But then we learned that she didn't, and we learned that he was always like that. So I take all those feelings back. The only good thing I have to say about Brenner is that his hair in those flashbacks looks incredible. But Matthew Modine is doing an incredible job acting. Brenner is so creepy. He has this gentle, psychopathic way about him that's very interesting and terrifying. It's a shame that Brenner had to come back. I think Brenner's gonna die this season too. It's a shame that she has to revisit all this trauma in order to get her powers back. And his whole analogy with the stroke was very interesting. But I'm just eager for Elle to get out of this Nina tank and to move forward, because I really want her to team up with all the other characters again. But I also am so, this whole backstory of everything that happened with the lab was so interesting. And it was so interesting to learn about her as a little kid a few years before the events of season 1. Oh, just the way they unfold everything that happened and how she learns about it is so genius writing wise. That's it for characters. I would also just like to give a shout out to all the minor characters that really enhanced the show as well. All the agents in California, as I said, Susie and her family, so funny and so brilliant, so Mormon. All the lab workers that are like a fan of Elle, like she's the Madonna to them. The Soviet soldiers were all really good. The students in the school, particularly the bullies and the other students in Hawkins, those are all really interesting. They're such minor characters, but I want to learn more about them. Part of that is props to the actors, and part of that is props to the stylists and the writing and all of that. The trailer park citizens were also really interesting. Again, the bullies. Chrissy's mom at Chrissy's funeral, when she was speaking, she was really interesting. It reminded me of Heather's. Like, I'm proud of my dead gay son, like that whole thing. It was interesting to see Chrissy's mom speak, especially because we know she's so abusive to Chrissy. And the guards at Brenner's base, who, when Elle kept running away or trying to run away, and they're like, you're really making us get our exercise. Like, that was such an unnecessary line, but it was so, I don't know, it was just so charming. Like, I really appreciate that that line was thrown in there. And also the parents, like Karen Wheeler and Ted, and also I'm going to lump Holly into this because she's with the parents all the time, but seeing Lucas, Dustin, and Mike's parents all together, it was not action sequence at all. They just kind of stormed into the house, but like seeing them all be concerned about their kids and interact together was something I didn't really realize that I wanted, but it was awesome. I loved seeing them all interact together, and I really want to see more of that. It was epic. And also Max's mom, I feel so bad for her. And also I'm confused about if she was ever there at all in the backyard or not. I don't know. Because she was kind of gone when Max woke up, and I feel like no mom would walk away from their kid if they thought they were having like what looks like a seizure, honestly. I also want to give a shout out to the new chief of police, Officer Powell. He would have been my pick too. God help Hawkins if Callahan is ever the chief. That would not be good. Callahan is just awful. And I feel bad for Officer Powell because he's so out of the loop with all of this supernatural stuff, and so there's no explanation to what's going on. And he's really he's getting the brunt of everyone's complaints and everything, but there's no way he'll know what to do, you know? Like, how do you deal with that? How do you deal with it? It's awful. But he's doing his best, and I hope he's doing okay aside from everything that he has to deal with right now. Okay. I would now like to take a break from my, I don't know, songs of praises and talk about my biggest complaint with the season, and that is the CGI. The CGI is so good for so much of it, but every time they show little Elle up close, it is so terrifying. It's so freaky. But then like other times, her little CGI self looks so real. So I really don't know. Maybe it's just the close-up thing. I don't know. But I love little Elle, and the shots of her not up close were amazing. Or like even the full body shots of her. She looks normal, but it's just the close-ups where she just looks so terrifyingly not real that it freaks me out. Freaks me out. And then finally, I really want to talk about the answers we got. We got a lot of answers this season, and it was incredibly satisfying. In my non-spoiler review, I just kept saying satisfying, satisfying. It's so satisfying. It's very satisfying. We got so many answers to the upside down, the logic of how the lights work, the physics of it. For so long, I was so confused about like the cars that were there and why it seemed frozen in time. We find out that it is frozen in time. I really want to know why, but that's really cool. It's something that I feel like we all knew, but like needed to have said. I really enjoyed learning about number 1 and all the other numbers. I want to know why Collie has different powers than the rest of them, because it seemed like they all had a variation of Elle's powers. And Collie's is like very different. Also, I really want to see Collie getting out. I know that so many people trashed on episode 7 of season 2, and that's why they kind of just left it alone. I think they really need to bring Collie back in, and I hope that they are planning to do that. As of when this season is happening, Collie was gone already, and that makes sense. I know that people have been saying that, they just like completely wrote her out of a storyline that she canonically should have been in, when canonically actually she should not have been in that storyline at all, because I know that Elle's suppressed memory, like suppressed all the memories of what happened, but I don't know that she necessarily suppressed memories of all the other numbers in general. I mean, I don't know, but if she didn't, then she shouldn't know who Collie is, because she doesn't in season 2. So I think it makes sense that Collie had already gotten out by then, especially since Collie's a lot older than her, so she would have been old enough to figure out how to get out of Hawkins' lab by the time that Elle was as old as she is in season 4's flashbacks. So, I don't know. I want to see more of Collie, but I really appreciated learning more about the other numbers. And I still feel so bad for some of them, like the little twins and number 10 and like all the cute ones that like should not have died. Like, not that any of them should die, you know, like I don't condone killing, but number 1 really just killed all of them, which seemed a little excessive to me, but I'm not going to try and logic with who Vecna is, you know? So, and speaking of that, number 1, first of all, that actor, incredible, absolutely incredible. And he was really creepy, and then he was charming, and then he was really creepy. So like, oh, it was so well done and so well written and so well revealed that I'm very, very, very satisfied with that. And I am so satisfied that he was also the kid from the Creel house, because I never got to make my theory video. I thought Victor Creel was going to be Vecna, but I knew that Vecna was really like integrally tied to the Creel house, and I figured that the Creel house was the source of the original gate. That was my theory. That was wrong, but it was pretty close because those kids were sketch. Just watching meet the Creels, like that whole thing when that came out, that teaser, that really freaked me out. I was like, oh, those people are sketchy. Those kids are sketchy. Like something is wrong about this. And obviously there was a lot wrong, but the fact that it's the son was so genius. And you guys really need to watch this season twice, because they purposely just like don't show the kid in all, like Victor's original telling of the story. Like they don't show the son that much, but they do show him when Vecna's telling that side of the story at /1. There's a lot of foreshadowing. You guys have to watch this season twice. Everything with the Creel house, it being a demon but it not being a demon, was really, I loved that. Victor Creel was such an engaging character. Everything about his whole reveal was so Silence of the Lambs, and I loved it. I love finding out like that Sam Owens was fired because the Russians invaded under his watch. Like that was really interesting. Again, learning more about Hop's daughter, that was really interesting. How Elle found a way out of the lab because she knew about those drainage pipes, those were great. That was great. So I'm very, very, very satisfied with how many answers we got this season. That was just incredible. And overall, I loved this season. I loved how it felt like a perfect sequel in the same way that season 2 felt like a perfect sequel. Season 3 to me feels like a detour, and season 4 feels like another direct sequel, just like season 2 did to season 1. So I'm overall, like, my word for season 4 is satisfying. And if I had to pick more words, I'd say terrifying and suspenseful. But I loved and fascinating. I loved all the answers they gave us. Everything about this season was satisfying. And I'm so excited because it's not even over. We have so much more to learn. So I'm very excited to look forward to the next 2 episodes. I will be making videos about, obviously I'll react to trailers if they release a trailer for volume 2, and I will review those volumes, that second volume as well. I think that this season is so good. The length just feels right. The episodes kind of fly by even though they're very long. And my favorite episodes of the season are episode 4 and episode 7. So I love it. I'm excited to talk more about it with you guys. Please let me know in the comments down below all of the thoughts and theories and reflections you have about this season. Who is your favorite character this season? Who is your favorite character in general? And do you like their storyline this season, or do you wish for more? If you have any characters or any specific things you want me to talk about more in its own video, please let me know in the comments. I'm going to make a kind of theory video for season 4 volume 2 because I didn't get to do one for volume 1 because of life things. And I'm going to make a Will video, and I'm going to try and get my Hopper character study video up because now feels like the perfect time to post it. And yeah, I have a lot of ideas, but I really want, and I have a whole video that I'm planning about Easter eggs. So please let me know everything you want. Subscribe if you want to see all of that coverage of Stranger Things. I'm a huge Stranger Things fan, so you can count on me. And yeah, please give this video a thumbs up if you liked it, and thanks for hanging out with me. Thank you for geeking out with me. And I wish I had reaction videos of me watching the show, but it was like really dark because we watched it on a projector, so it was like pitch black in the room. So I have no reaction videos, but just know I was terrified the whole time. The first 3 episodes, my roommates and I were like clutching each other. It was so scary, but I loved it. I loved it, and I was freaking out the whole time. So I'm very excited to talk about this more, and thank you guys for bearing with this probably very long video. And I love talking about this show with you guys. Thank you, and have a good day, everyone. Bye.